Harvey Ma is the general manager of the Sam's Club Member Access Platform, or MAP. And I recently had the opportunity to interview him for a profile for Forbes. And I want to share a few takeaways from my discussion with Harvey and how the Sam's Club Member Access Platform is doing things a little bit differently in the world of retail media. Let's jump in. Good morning and welcome to the Retail Media Breakfast Club. I'm your host, Kiri Masters, and every weekday at 6 a.m. Eastern, I bring you candid and real discussions in the world of retail media and marketplaces in just 10 minutes. So bring your own cup of coffee and we'll get smarter about retail media together. So I'm going to discuss a few different themes from this interview, and if you want to read the whole thing, you can check out in the show notes a link back to my original article on Forbes.com. But I'm going to capture a number of different themes from this discussion as it relates to the member access platform differentiators and how Harvey is thinking about the retail media landscape for Sam's Club. So first of all, the key difference here is that Sam's Club is a club retailer, and as such, with its membership model, there are different incentives and obligations versus a traditional retailer. And Harvey calls out this core philosophy of the retailer being in service of members, and that extends to its retail media platform insofar as they're not optimizing for ad revenue necessarily. They're actually taking retail media revenue and putting it back into the club experience. That can be through associates, through the in-store experience. And the philosophy here is creating a virtuous cycle rather than extracting profit from the retail media platform in general. And this is in stark contrast to almost every other retail media platform out there, perhaps with the exception of its key competitor, Costco. And actually also, now that I'm thinking of it, another retailer, Thrive Market, who I also did a profile on, the leader of their retail media network. That is not a public company, but a private company that takes their profit dollars and reinvests it back into the member experience. So that creates sort of a different focus, I guess, for the retail media network. It's not just about stuffing search results with ads until consumers are turned off and finding that tipping point, which certainly as a consumer on a lot of retailer websites, it feels like a giant A/B test to see just how much advertising consumers can really handle. So I think that creates a different landscape for the member access platform. And this allows Harvey Ma to do things a little bit differently. He wants to shift this perception that retail media can be a tax, that it is often a stick and a carrot for a lot of retailers in their negotiations with manufacturers. And he wants it to shift the perception from being an obligation to being an opportunity. And I think he's right on this point, which is that there's a lot of zero-sum thinking out there, that if retailers are winning, brands are losing. And as the industry matures, I think there's less of that. But certainly in some of my more private discussions with retailers and brands, there is a lot of us versus them thinking still because of the incentives that retailers have to drive revenue, and that can drive some short-term thinking on both sides. So it is neat that this platform is sort of operating without the constraints there, and they can do things a little bit differently. So one of the things that they do differently is around measurement and being a little bit more flexible with things like attribution windows. He calls out an example of a 30-day attribution window is just not relevant if we're talking about buying a television, for example, and that the platform is able to tailor measurement approaches based on different product categories. Now, this was interesting to me because of all of the talk in the industry about measurement standardization and moving to more uniform metrics. And I asked Harvey about that. And his approach is less around standardization as the gold star and more around customization. And this makes sense in the context of Sam's Club really having a smaller assortment than a large format grocery store, for example. As in a club environment, we're talking about high volume, large pack sizes, but a smaller selection per category than other retailers. So the pool of potential endemic advertisers that Sam's Club would have be a lot smaller than a pool of endemic advertisers for a Kroger, for example, or even a Best Buy, and certainly much, much smaller than a marketplace retailer like Amazon and Walmart. So that means with less overall advertisers, they can afford to be a little bit more customized. They can afford to look category by category and be more flexible in the measurement approach. And that's certainly what Harvey called out in our discussion, that we shouldn't be measuring the campaign results for a consumer electronics brand the same way that we do for potato chips. I also asked Harvey about the company's relationship with Walmart, and obviously there's a huge opportunity for Sam's Club to be drafting off a lot of the investments that Walmart has made in particularly its retail media technology. And I asked, how has the relationship with Walmart influenced their approach to build versus buy retail media technology? And he had I thought it was a great framework, great thinking around this, which is 3 questions. Can we, how we, and should we? Can we do this? How would we implement this technology or idea in a club environment? And then finally, should we is the hardest but most important question. Is this going to add to the member experience? So I thought that was interesting. And he did note that they get to try out a lot of the Walmart technology. It's a great opportunity to do that. He said, handed the keys to go for a test drive. So it's clear that they are using at least some of Walmart's technology, but it's not necessarily suited to a club environment at all times. So clearly they are also sourcing and implementing some of their own technology. And then finally, I want to talk about Harvey's background because I think it's interesting. Several weeks ago at this point, I did do a deep dive into what the career path of these people who are running retail media networks looks like. I think it's interesting because it seems like there are so many retail media networks, but looking in the US, just for example, there's still less than 100 ultimately. But this is a really important job at these retailers. The retail media business within these companies is responsible for a heck of a lot of operating income now. So it's interesting to look at what kind of background these people have. And Harvey has quite an unconventional background. He started out as a mechanical engineer and somehow landed in retail media. He admits that this is a very unconventional path and admits that in his first meeting talking about digital marketing, all of the acronyms were so overwhelming and he texted his boss saying, "I think I'm in the wrong job here." Which I think a lot of people coming in and working with a new retailer or a new system or coming into retail media for the first time, like, wow, there's so much jargon, so many acronyms here. So it's certainly relatable. But I think that this background as an engineer actually really is helpful. And he talks about asking why so many times when we come in. Why is this the way things happen? Why do we do it that way? Keep asking why. And eventually someone's just going to say, because it's how it's done. And he never accepted that as an answer. And I think that engineering mindset is actually really beneficial in this field, especially because we're writing history. We don't have to be tethered to the past in this industry. So I thought that that was a cool origin story from Harvey and very interesting to dive more into Sam's Club member access platform. Hope you enjoyed this breakdown, and I'll catch you next time. Well, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Retail Media Breakfast Club. We meet here every day at 6 a.m. Eastern. So be sure to subscribe and get your daily dose of insights, trends, and hot takes in the world of retail media and marketplaces.